Yo, how you doing, man?
Good.
I'm
How you
doing
doing,
good.
Truth?
Not much,
So,
but
Truth, are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
all right, man. Look, I'm a believer, but I'll be 18 in like a few months. So does it really count? Like,
You should have lied. You really should have lied, Truth Seeker.
come on, man. Come on. Let's be real. Come
Well,
on,
listen,
man.
you're on YouTube and
I
not.
know what I'm talking.
Well, you're on YouTube and
I know
not.
what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. I promise.
You're on YouTube and not on TikTok, so I can talk to you being 17. But if you're on TikTok, I absolutely cannot talk to 18-year-olds. They'll get my live banned. But here's the deal, Truth Seeker. I know you probably think you know what you're talking about, but you might want to tread lightly with whatever the conversation is. So the question for tonight is, why would I want to trust the Bible?
All right. So, in my opinion, because subjective, but I think you should trust it because historical reliability.
Like what?
There's like the crucifixion,
So
the person of Jesus,
so
um, the followers of Jesus,
so
the prophecies.
what
There's
prophecies?
so much that the messianic prophecies.
But Jesus didn't fulfill any.
Who them? Yeah, he did.
Not even one.
I can show you. I can show you one right now.
I'd love to have it.
All right, let's go. Hey, I never really. I'll be honest. I never really debated before.
It's okay. Don't worry.
But, all right, Isaiah 53.
Sure. Have you read all of Isaiah?
Yeah, I've read the whole thing.
Sure. What's the
All right,
context of Isaiah?
verse.
What time period is he writing in?
What time period?
Yeah.
Thousands of years before Jesus.
A couple hundred. He's writing approximately.
Yeah. Hey, I'll be honest. I didn't really study the dates like that. I'll be honest. I
I know.
became a Christian like 2 years ago.
The context is important.
But
So Isaiah is writing
you-
in the chapters you're referring to. He's writing about the release of the captives from the Babylonian captivity because they were taken captive starting in 605 by the Babylonians. That was their first incursion into Israel. And they're now being freed. They were freed in 539 by King Cyrus. And the section of text we're talking about, chapter 40 to chapter 55, is all about them being released from that captivity. And I think that the servant that is referred to in the section of text that you're interested in is actually the nation of Israel. Would you like to hear why that is the case?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
The prophet tells you. So, for example, if you go to Isaiah 41, 8 through 9, he tells you on about 8 or 9 different occasions, says, "But you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I've chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend," so on and so forth. It says, "I called you from the furthest corners, saying to you that you are my servant." So in Isaiah 41, the servant is Israel. In Isaiah 43:10, he says, "You are my witnesses, says the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen." So again, the nation of Israel is the servant. And then Isaiah 44, 1 through 2, "Hear now, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen." And then he does the same in Isaiah 44, 21. "Remember these things, O Jacob and Israel, you are my servant." And then 2 more, Isaiah 45, 4 says, "For the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel my chosen, I call you by your name." And then my favorite is Isaiah 48, 20, where he says, "Go out from Babylon, flee from Chaldea, declare this with a shout of joy, proclaim it, send it forth to the ends of the earth, and say, the Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob." So when the prophet tells me over and over again that the servant is Israel, I take him at his word.
hmm Yeah, but then how would you reconcile 53 verse 5? How do you how
What
would
about
you
it?
reconcile that? It says he was pierced for our transgressions. So how could the nation of Israel be pierced for our transgressions?
Well, it doesn't say
That sounds
pierced
like that
is the first part. So that's a
NIV says he was pierced for our he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him.
yeah.
And by
So
his wounds we were healed. How could just
well,
one question, how could a nation be referred to as he? That doesn't really make sense.
well, we actually just covered that a second ago. Isaiah says, "You are my witnesses, Jacob and Israel, and my servant." So, like the fact that there's a singular he is meaningless here. It's a metaphor. The nation of Israel is being personified as a human being.
That sounds like Jesus, man. I'll be honest.
I know
That
it
sounds
sounds like
like Jesus.
Jesus,
Because it,
but it's not
yeah. How?
because it's the nation of Israel. The prophet told you that the servant is Israel, and he tells you over and over again, leading up to the passage, why that's the case. God says, "When I redeem my servant Israel from captivity, all the nations are going to know that I am the true God. I am the one true God when I restore Israel." That's why it says in chapter, let me grab it, chapter 40, actually 54, I think is what I'm looking for. 54 or 56, 1 second. 56, actually 55, I was in between. He says, "The nations that you do not know shall run to you, because the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, has glorified you," which is in line with what the prophets say as well. In Zechariah 8 and Micah chapter 4, it talks about how when God glorifies Israel, all the nations are going to run to Israel because it's apparent that their God is the actual rightful God.
I mean, I think Israel also can be referred to as God,
How so?
because at least that's what he's referred to in the Old Testament.
I don't know of a single occasion where that happens.
I can't really. I'll be honest. I can't really recall the verses. I'm not lying, because I'm doing a reread
Right.
of like the first, I'm in Joshua right now, but I just did a reread from Genesis to Deuteronomy, and like I remember God being called Israel.
No, Jacob was called
But
Israel.
uh, but hey, but about Isaiah 53, if
Right.
you keep reading, it says, yeah, it was the Lord, like in verse 10. I mean, even if you read the whole chapter,
I've read it all.
it just sounds like it sounds just like it,
Like a human
like
being
Jesus.
suffering.
If yeah,
Yeah, that's the whole point. The
he
whole
was
point is to
despised.
personify
Look
the
at this,
nation of Israel as a human being
even in
suffering.
even in the first in verse 3, it says he was despised and rejected by mankind,
Yeah, the
a
nation of Israel.
man
Yeah,
a man suffering
I'm
and
aware.
familiar with pain,
Yeah,
nation being likened to a man.
yeah.
That don't really make sense.
We just read it. Were you not listening?
Familiar with pain, like
In
one
Isaiah
from whom people hide their
43:10,
faces.
he says, "You are my witnesses," which is plural, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it says, "You are my witnesses," says the Lord, "and my servant whom I have chosen." So he's saying a group of people in the plural is his servant in the singular.
Hmm. What verse is that?
Isaiah 43:10.
41:10.
I would also point out while you're reading that real quick is when you interpret Isaiah 53 properly, like it's the nation of Israel, it matches every other prophetic book. Every other prophetic book talks about this. When you interpret it as a human being who's suffering and dying for someone's sins, it contradicts all the other messianic prophecies. Every messianic prophecy says the exact opposite of this.
Hey.
But listen, the New Testament cites a lot of prophecies about Jesus. Maybe there's another one.
Yeah. Hey. I'll be honest, I gotta keep studying. But I just came on just to like, it never really made sense to me how like a lot of Jews, they call it the forbidden chapter.
I've never heard a Jew say
But
that.
then, yeah, I've seen videos where it's called the forbidden chapter, like in the
Not
synagogues. They don't
not by
read
Jews, only by
Isaiah
Christians who say that
53.
nonsense. I'm personally friends with multiple Jewish rabbis, and they don't call it that.
All right, one more verse, and then
Sure,
I can get out of
go
here.
for it.
But where was it?
I mean, I
It's
commend you on
27.
your disposition. You've got a great personality, and you're very mature for your age. I've had a bunch of adults in here come in and act like jackasses. You've acted better than all of them.
Hey, thanks, man. Well, yeah, Isaiah 7, I think it's verse 14.
Yeah. Hmm.
Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son,
Right. Hmm.
and will be called him Emmanuel.
Hmm.
And then I remember in another verse, didn't it say he was going to be called Mighty God?
That's Isaiah.
Messiah?
That's Isaiah chapter 9, but we can get there next if you want to. So Isaiah chapter
Yeah,
7, we need to talk about the context again. So in Isaiah chapter 7, there's some stuff happening. The prophet Isaiah is being sent to a particular person to give a message to a particular person. Who is that person?
Hmm. Is it Ahaz?
You got it. And Ahaz is the
that
king
it?
of Judah. Right. So
Yeah.
the two kingdoms in the north, the northern Israelites and the Arameans, made an alliance. And the king of Judah was not friendly to that alliance. So they go to war trying to replace the king of Judah, but they're not successful, right? So the prophet, the first time when he goes to them, ends his prophecy in verse 9 when he says, if you do not stand firm in your faith, you shall not stand at all. So the first prophecy ends with, you need to have faith that God is with you during your time of trial, basically. Then the second prophecy, the one that you're interested in, starts in verse 10. And he says, again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, saying, so from the onset, this is a prophecy being spoken to Ahaz, right? Right.
Yeah.
So it says to Ahaz, ask a sign of the Lord your God, and let it be as deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary mortals that you weary my God also? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child, and shall bear a son, and shall name him Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey by the time he knows how to refuse evil and choose the good. For before the child knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land before whose two kings you are in dread will be deserted. So the prophecy is about a child who's already been conceived. He's about to be born. And before he is old enough to know right from wrong, the two kings that are attacking King Ahaz are going to be wiped out.
Hmm.
So it's not about a Messiah. There's no Messiah mentioned here.
All right. I said last verse, but this is actually the last one. I
All
promise.
right, go for it.
And I promise I'll actually get out of here. 'Cause...
No, listen, you're delightful. You're stay as long as you want.
All right, Proverbs 30.
Verse 4?
Yeah, 3 through 4.
Yeah, the proverb of Agwar.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it says, I have not learned wisdom, nor have I attained to the knowledge of the Holy One. Who has gone up to heaven and come down? Whose hands have gathered up the wind? Who has wrapped up the waters in a cloak? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is the name of his son? Surely you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, at least for me, when I read this, it sounds like, before it says who is his son, it's saying who has gone up to heaven and come down, whose hands have gathered up the winds,
Mm-hmm.
who has established all the ends of the earth. There's no prophet who can establish all the ends of the earth.
It's not about a prophet.
So who is it?
It's
If
nobody.
it's not God, then who is it?
No, let's listen to what's actually happening here, right? So Agwar is lamenting that he lacks understanding because he's human, right? He says, surely in verse 2, surely I am too stupid to be human. I do not have human understanding. I have not learned wisdom, nor have I knowledge of the Holy One. So he's saying, I don't have understanding, and I certainly don't have understanding of like the heavenly realm. Like the Holy Ones is a euphemism for typically the angels or the members of the divine council. And so he's saying, I don't have human understanding. I don't have any wisdom. I have no knowledge of the Holy Ones. Then he says, who has ascended to heaven and come down? He's talking about man. He's now describing why he has no knowledge
Yeah.
of the heavenly realm. He's saying, who has ascended to heaven and come down? Who has gathered the wind in the hollow of his hand? Who has wrapped up the waters in a garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? He's now comparing humans to God. He's saying humans have not done this. That's why he says, what is that person's name and what is the name of that person's child? Actually, your translation says son, mine says child, but it does say son. It says B'nai in the original Hebrew, except for some of the textual variants. We've got a couple textual variants in Greek and Aramaic that say children instead of child or son. But the translators that translated it into Aramaic and Greek understood that this is not about a single son of God. This is about human descendants. He's saying no human's ever done this. And if a human's ever done it, show me who it is. I want to know. Right? I don't read this as talking about a son of God.
That's interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I just wanted to see how you interpret those verses, but
Sure.
yeah, that's really it. All
Well,
right, man.
True Circuit, thanks for coming through and having such a kind disposition, even though obviously we disagree. I think you're a good example of what other callers, what kind of conversation can be had if you don't come in all hostile.
Yeah.
All right, cheers.
All right, man.